The conversations and information provided are not intended to substitute professional medical advice, diagnosis, or treatment.
The opinions expressed are the speaker's own and do not reflect the view of Humana Military or the Department of Defense.
Welcome to the Operation Within podcast, where we talk about health and a deeper sense of well-being.
Operation Within is a collective initiative to optimize holistic health matters and nourish within community, within self, and within family.
Thank you for joining the conversation on Operation Within podcast. We are your hosts, Mel
and Marty, and our conversations are real, they're raw, and reflective.
These conversations offer meaningful dialogue on experiences within the military community, oriented to empower and strengthen health and vitality in our communities who serve.
We want to give a special thanks to Humana Military and our partners who have brought Operation Within to life.
Let's dive in. Hey, welcome back to the Operation Within podcast. It's Mel here, and I'm so excited to be here with my dear friend and somebody that I've connected with in the military community, Tania Palacios. I am really excited to have you dive into this conversation of motherhood in the military and your background. But if you want to share briefly just a little bit who you are.
Yes. Hello, everybody. First, I want to say thank you for having me here. I'm so excited about this. And I'm going to start a little bit with where I'm from in case my accent comes out. I'm originally from Boston, so you might hear a few funky words here and there. But I am a military veteran. I served 5 years active duty in the Army, and my husband is currently serving in the Army as well. He is on his 21st year of service. So we have a lot of definitely some good experience as a single person, a married woman, and mother in the military that I'm excited about sharing today. So I joined the military in 2000, and I served until 2005. And then once we got married and we moved to Boston, that's where we continued our military career. I was there for a little while. And then I moved to San Antonio with my family and my 3 kids. I have 4 kids, ages 8, 13, 16, and a daughter. My 4th one is in college. So she stayed back in Boston to live and go to college in Boston. But my experience, honestly, has been a plethora of different adventures, different moving around different places and different experiences. And I'm going to move forward and talk a little bit about that more in the podcast, really focusing on how that pertains to just different seasons in life and the way that we grow and the way that we adapt and what helps to make us resilient in our children, and share a little bit about that moving forward.
Yeah, I mean, I think that that's a beautiful way to think about a military, your military career in your life. There are these different seasons, and even in each place that you go, there's a different version of yourself in a way, right?
Absolutely.
And we've talked about before in other episodes about what's kind of fun as a military spouse, or just being able to move around. It's like any new place you go, you really get this fresh opportunity to get clear about how you want to show up, or if you want to do something different. And that is a beautiful aspect of it. But then also the other side of I really love the community I was in, and leaving that community can be so hard.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, so when we moved here to San Antonio, that's definitely one of the things that I want to say adventure, because I came here with an open mind. You know, we knew the area. We have family in San Antonio and Laredo. We were really excited about the move. And my background is in psychology and counseling. So, you know, I got my bachelor's degree and my master's while I was in the military, and that's what I focused on once I got out. And so I have plenty of years of experience in working with children and families, adults, all around mental health and counseling. And when we moved here, I kind of was like, I don't know what I want to do. We have this new experience again now. We are in this new community, and It takes a while. They say it takes about 2 years to kind of regain that sense of community again and kind of really attach to who you are and what you want to be. So when we moved here, I decided that I wanted to become an entrepreneur. I just looked at my life. I stepped back and I said, I really want to take more time for myself, for my family, and really focus on what do I want to do. And then that's when I got into coaching. I own my own business in Helotes. It's called TLP Wellness. And I work one-on-one with people as well as in groups in regards to just coaching, healthy lifestyles, really focusing on the mental and emotional aspect of wellness. And, that incorporates not only the one-on-one coaching, but also looking at your life as a whole and how what you put into your body affects who you are, whether it's, in your home, in the classroom for kids, in your work environment, not just food, but also, negative, positive, products, chemicals. So one of the other things that I do in my business is also just talking about detox, and not like the typical cleansing detox that you might see, online or, and not that that's bad, but also focusing on like the mental and emotional.
I love that.
And kind of cleansing yourself and just coming to terms with who you really are, your true identity, your true self. And I just felt like I had this calling because I've been through this journey, and coming here and moving here, it's something that I've been through personally. And I really wanted to set that forth with my lifestyle.
Yeah.
And making that difference in the community in San Antonio.
I really love that concept of, it's like we spend a lot of our life collecting identity, collecting experiences, collecting affiliation and belonging and community, right? We add all this stuff to ourselves and oftentimes fall into the illusion that we are what we've added to ourselves. And this concept of unpeeling and unpacking and exploring even the narratives of who we think we are and the process of this detox. I think that is such a profound way to lead to transformation. And I love that concept in almost like you kind of tied it with this other element of nutrition and detox. Like, what are we like in our mind and in our emotions carrying that we can let go of or release, right?
Absolutely. Because honestly, that I wasn't, when we lived in Boston, I'm going to talk a little bit about my family now. My son, when he was in the 4th grade, he had a severe concussion. And that was a year of just, it was almost like an awakening, because we didn't realize, or personally I didn't, because my husband's a PA. I don't think I realized how much an effect, even some simple things as going back towards, he didn't know how to even do simple math. It was a good year of recovering from that. So throughout that process, that's when I started doing yoga for myself and mindfulness for my son. I actually hired a coach one-on-one to come into our home and teach my son as well as our family, how do we get through this without the stress and anxiety put on him, and not us also projecting our concerns onto him as a going into the 5th grade as a young kid. So I saw how much of a difference that made, and all of us collectively really just taking those little steps to focus on being aware and being present, and not thinking about, oh my gosh, how am I going to get to the end of the year? Just, okay, let's focus on today.
One moment at a time. Yeah.
Yes.
Yeah.
And then, not only that, but just, the anxiety of the situation, and, he also has ADHD and anxiety. So I really attribute that moment in our life of learning how to practice being mindful about what he was going through to the first step in getting to where I am today, basically.
I think that a lot of people can relate to. It's like these tragedies or these like really intense experiences usually lead to the breakthrough, right? Of like deeper awareness of self and ways to, self-regulate and heal. And I think as a parent, what year was that, if you don't mind me asking?
No, I don't mind at all. That was actually in about 2013.
And you guys were in Boston, you said?
Yes, we were in Boston.
And when did you move to San Antonio?
In 2018.
Okay, yeah. And wow, that must have been, you guys had family nearby?
We do. We have family in Laredo and San Antonio. So we were very lucky to, we were very lucky to move somewhere where we already had, a bit of a support system, because that makes a big difference.
It does. And when you guys were in Boston, did you guys have anybody nearby? Or how was support? How did you guys seek support when you were navigating that?
So luckily, when we were in Boston, I actually had my family there as well. And that was one of the reasons why, we went to Boston in starting to, build a family and have that support, because that is huge for us.
It is big,
It is
yeah.
a big factor in, where we go, where we live, who we lean on, because having that family there, especially when the children were young, and my husband being in the military and, working full time and going through his PA program, that was such an asset to have that family nearby. But then through that, I really do believe in, your friends are the family that you choose, because
Right.
we also built a huge network of friends over there. And at any given time, we would have, this person or that person be able to just reach out to. So moving here to San Antonio, like I said before, luckily we had family, but that was one piece that was really missing. Moving here, that I feel that when you're in the military and you're going to a different, duty station, there's usually that sense of community where no matter who you are or where you come from, you're kind of just accepted.
Yeah.
You band together, you help each other out. And so moving here and not living on base, that was a change. And then COVID happened.
Oh, yeah.
And so with all of that, there was also this readjustment, I think, and realignment in myself. And that's why I decided to move forward with that, because I said, this is not where I want to be. This is not who I want to be. I know that I am more than this. I know that I can do more for the community. And then also, that's how you get to meet people.
Absolutely.
And the social aspect of community and putting yourself out there and being available and present and attending is just, I don't know, I'm trying to think of that right word. It's just...
It's so, as humans, we need belonging.
Yeah.
We need, and I really believe for military spouses, and I can speak from my own experience, I know that my family would love to be part of my daughter's life and be able to help. And if we were close, and we got a little taste of it when my husband had orders in Florida, which was during, it was right before the pandemic started. And then when we started building community in Florida, even though I was coming back and forth between San Antonio, and I would definitely admit that I was the epitome of the military spouse who was like, I'm not moving and we're going to figure out a way. And it was not easy. I think I've said recently to somebody, between the choice, because when that geographical separation option showed up, when we were getting orders for to Florida and leaving San Antonio after I had built my yoga studios, I have a thriving business, I have partnerships with organizations, I didn't want to let go of that. So I chose going back and forth. And then the weight of staying and then doing the back and forth thing versus closing down everything, and the loss of closing down all my businesses and all the things, ironically, which the pandemic, it ended up really unfolding that way, ironically. But it was both as painful. It's not like, I think as military spouses, we're put in these, when you're in the military, and this is just my viewpoint as the spouse, watching my husband cope and navigate, it's like we're working towards a goal. This is, supporting our family. There's a lot of, I think a little bit more of firsthand piece about like the choices, right? And it's like as a spouse, you're interpreting and trusting your spouse. And it's like, okay, yes, this is part of how we're going to support our family. And, you know, you're happy, you love your job, and okay, I can adapt and figure this out. But then when you're in it, navigating, because at the end of the day, oftentimes it's the spouse or the non-military member, oftentimes in single households, I'm sure, like navigating childcare is a whole drama. But when we were in Florida temporarily, and then when the pandemic hit, I stayed in Florida. We did have family nearby, and that was like, I'm so grateful for that opportunity to know what that was like, to be able to have the weekends and my parents watching my daughter and my husband and I spending time, just him and I. Like, that was so amazing. And when I look at like my sister-in-laws and like, you know, other people in I guess in the civilian world where it's like, yeah, like, you know, everybody, the families are all together and doing these things together, or they help each other out so quickly. You know, you do feel that loss. You feel this like, okay, there is something missing. And, you know, you build this community with friends and family. And honestly, I'm so grateful for the friends that have become family. You know, we had at a time church family that really was able to help support us. And those things were so imperative for, you know, to know that my kid is safe, we're in a good place, or we have friends that they can, you know, outside of school that we get to have this social time with. It makes such a difference on mental health. But like you said, that courage of how do you create that? Like, and that's one of the most common questions I get is how do you build that? And the reality is relationships aren't built instantly. I mean, you might connect with someone and be like, I vibe with you, but it's built on trust. The relationship is built when I'm in a situation and then you show up and support me. And it's like, boom, trust. Like the trust of, or if I'm going through something and you actually went out of your way to connect with me and make sure I was okay. That's when the relationships build, is through support and trust. It's not just this, hey, we took pictures together and it was fun, or we were at this event and then we didn't talk. It's the support. And it takes time. Like, those things don't just happen overnight. And so if you're moving every 3 years, like you said, it usually takes about 1.5 to 2 years to acclimate, and then, you know, moving, like preparing for another move and starting over. And I have heard military spouses share that sometimes you withdraw because you know you're going to leave and you don't want to get too attached. But the shadow of that, I would say, is that we miss out on the support that's imperative, that allows us to have space even just for ourselves, or to go have fun and be with people, or to create, even for myself with my work, right? Sometimes I need to go, I have work to do. And if my husband's not able to, having really solid support makes such a difference. But it does take time. And I can't say that like every childcare situation's been great. Like, we've learned, you know, and there's been red flags or situations that of people not being reliable. And one of the gems I want to share is that when I started believing in people's grace, that people will have grace for me, people will understand, people will be compassionate. I saw that when I was in a space where I felt like people needed me to be perfect and people needed me to perform. That's what I got, is people being hard on me. So it's what part of this is a mindset of what we put out there to see what support we get, right? When I see people having grace, it's like, hey guys, I'm running late because I had a situation with childcare, or I can't do this because I have my daughter, right? Just the grace and the love, or that, hey, no, bring her with you. Like, we love, yes. And so that opened this door. So asking and believing in that as well has made a difference.
I love that, Gem. I think that is so true. And not only that, but I think it really translates well into, you know, how our children can feel as well.
Yes.
And it holds so true to our relationships with them, because, you know, we may project that feeling onto them as well. And, you know, we all go through this period of, you know, sometimes self-doubt, or allowing others to be able to understand that it's okay. And also showing our children that, you know, just because you don't have a friend yet and we've been here for 6 months doesn't mean that nobody likes you. And they internalize it, and it really starts to weigh down on them. And so just teaching them that, make these connections, you know, be social, put yourself out there, and also be okay with making a mistake, or, I read something a couple of weeks ago that I absolutely loved, because, if you know me, I'm notorious for running late. I would say it runs in the family. I've gotten a lot better over the years, but something as simple as, instead of saying I'm sorry for being late, like, thank you for waiting for me.
Yeah.
I just put this whole new perspective of like, wow, that's so simple. Why didn't I think of that before? And just allowing your kids to understand that, everybody is human. We all go through these transitions. Be graceful. Like, allow them to feel that compassion and that connection with others, and that it takes time.
Well, and we model this to them.
Yes.
Kids co-regulate with us.
Mm-hmm.
And, this is heavy because as a parent, I've seen it in a positive way and I've seen it in a negative way. Like, for sure, like being totally open. I am not perfect. Mm-hmm. And my daughter is the first mirror for me to see where I'm missing beats and, the parts of myself that it's easy to bypass. But then it's like, oh, wait, what is this about? And the more I witness like how she mirrors me and how she co-regulates with me. So my coping skills have such an impact on her. So what's funny is, you guys know I'm a yoga teacher, yoga therapy, and like mindfulness and all this. I do talk a lot about breath at home. And when she's upset, she will do a 5-count breath, or she will use breath, or as kind of kids love tangible things. So I have crystals all over my home. I think like I love them because they don't die like plants die. I can't keep plants alive. So crystals I can keep alive. And they do so many beautiful things for the environment and are just such lovely I just feel so good in the home. But she will use those. Like if she gets stressed or she gets scared, holding on to this like heavy grounded stone, that's the earth element. But like that's something that she's seen me do with crystals. Like I will have crystals for different things or just hold them. And, I think that the mind gives things more power, but crystals do resonate at soft vibrations that help our own resonance in our body for our health. And so watching her where she'll use these things as tools for regulation just on her own, not because I sat down and taught her, but because I do it. Right. And, or, when I used to, and it happens every now and again, but if I get upset or I get angry and react, I will watch my kid do the same thing. Whereas if I take time or I like to go into the sauna, it's a place for me to regulate, or the shower. Like she does that kind of stuff too, where she wants to go into the shower. If mommy's in the sauna, she wants to sit in the sauna with me and relax. And so her seeing this co-regulation aspect is so big, and it's like a downfall, but it's also how we can heal as a family as well from different experiences. Is how it's easy to put yourself on the back burner as mom, right? Or as the main caregiver in the family. But the way that you care for yourself and seek support with friends or try, it's hard for kids to look at their parents telling them, hey, go be brave and join this club so you can build friends when the parent doesn't leave the house. I mean, this is just an honest truth, right? So I love that you're pointing this out, because it's recognizing when we talk about mindful coping for kids, the first step is looking at how we co-regulate. How are our kids mirroring our regulation, and how are we attending our self-regulation?
Well, and also, talking about co-regulation, but also looking at, mommy guilt.
Oh, don't get me started.
Well, I know, right? I mean, I'll just bring it up really quickly, but I used to suffer from that when the kids were younger. I mean, that mommy guilt can be intense. And we put these restrictions on ourselves that we have to do this and we have to do that. And like you said, we have to be perfect. But also just stepping back and seeing where that stems from. And it really comes from our own self-doubt and our own, not believing in ourselves, and that what we need for self-care is just as important as what our children need. And that's just another example of, co-regulating or modeling to them, it's not the time right now. Mommy just needs 5 minutes, and stepping back, or daddy, whatever the situation is. And understanding that it's okay to feel that way, but it's also okay to take that step back and show them that how do you decompress, or how do you get work done, or how you can fit it into when it comes down to it, just making it work.
Yeah.
And it doesn't have to be perfectly aligned and adjusted. You say that the story about the crystals. My daughter has we have this stone that my daughter rubs, and she's 8 years old. And I've taught her kind of the same type of techniques, the breathing. And for some reason last night, something triggered her that the breathing wasn't working. And, I was in my room, and I was trying to get some work done, doing some email stuff, just really in a focused mode. And I see her just starting to just decompress and start to fall apart. So I just took her aside and gave her that stone and started working with her with that and just reminding her gentle reminders. And she really had a difficult time. So we just kind of laid down, and I started, rubbing her face, and I just started talking to her, just telling her a story about, okay, where's your favorite place? Tell me where it is. And it's just telling her a story about how she could get to that favorite place.
Aww.
Flying on a plane, describing all the little details. And I think I have to say, as I was doing it, I attribute that a lot to just learning a little bit more about meditation and yoga and how to use the words to really invite others to feel comfortable. And it was such a beautiful moment, because I put my not only guilt aside of not being there, but also guilt aside of, man, I really need to get this done right now. I can't do this right now. It's okay. Let's push it all away and let's focus on this. And I was just like, wow. Can you imagine if I had missed out on that?
Oh,
it was so special.
And the present, it's like quality of life. Where does it come from? It's present moment and trusting. When we're always trying to get things done in the future, or we're lost in the guilt of the past, we miss out on these sacred moments that really build our life. And so I think that this is so beautiful. Excuse you.
Sorry.
You're good. Yeah, it's so beautiful.
Choked up.
I know, that was it's so powerful. And I think when we make time to, kids love stories, and they will guided storytelling, and there's apps like the Calm app. They have relaxing storytelling kind of stuff for kids that you can turn on and snuggle with your child and let them listen to, or and however that works, whatever you use it for. But kids really love stories, and taking time to see them. And part of this is going back to co-regulation. When you see your kid in their pain, and a lot of times as parents, we want to, and I'm guilty of this too. So as I say this, this is non-judgment. This is part of our process of healing. It's easy to be it's not that big of a deal. Just stop. Or okay, you need to go do something different. Just stop. Right. Mm-hmm. And what we're doing, and we're demonstrating, is we're teaching them how to bypass their emotions. And it's an aspect of us projecting our own discomfort that we don't want to sit with them in their pain, because it's so uncomfortable to sit with someone in their pain. What I practiced with, especially your own kid, because my daughter will get so sideways about kids, but you got to remember, kids, this is their world. Losing that stuffed animal is their world. We only experience our pain as a human is based on a barometer of experiences we've had. And so for kids, it's and the little things can make them fly off the handle, but it's easy to be it's not a big deal, but for them it is. And so if you can practice removing the story and just being with the emotion with them. And then I am a huge advocate of letting them talk, because when they can articulate their feelings, even if it makes you uncomfortable, my daughter has said things to me that it as far as me not being present with something, and she doesn't say it like that, but essentially expressing I wasn't present with someone, or I'm not being very nice, or that makes me uncomfortable because I am being nice, or I thought I was being present, or it makes me feel bad. So it's easier to say you're fine, go figure it out, or here's the iPad, or let me distract you from it.
Oh, absolutely.
And, but the reality is it's 100% my own discomfort with being in her pain and supporting her. So we work out of that energy versus teaching her how to disassociate, which we're very good at in our society, is how do we look the other way? How do we avoid? And this is why we're so avoidant. And we don't even know our own truth because we can't even look at what we're not. Like can't discern what is me and what isn't me. And part of this is this conditioning of like, I just got to distract myself from discomfort. And part of mindful coping, especially for kids, is how they can articulate their discomfort. I want to tell a story. This is kind of a crazy story. So my daughter came home from school. She's 5, and she was very upset. She witnessed a little boy kill a frog during like recess or whatever. And she was very upset about it. She was very disturbed, and she was, we were talking, and I kept asking her details, and it was getting more and more gruesome, but I felt like it was very important for her to talk about it. Mm-hmm. And I asked her what would make her feel better, what would help her. Maybe there's something we can do to honor this frog's life. And when we got home, she wanted to draw a picture of this frog. So she drew a picture of the frog alive. And on the other side, she drew a picture of it dead. And she asked me, can you write dead? And it was funny because when my husband came home, I was like, look at this. But for her, then she moved on, and it hasn't come up, and she just felt so good about it. She hung it on her wall for a little bit. Mm-hmm. And that was her expression of processing that. And so giving kids the space, or even talking about death, talking about these uncomfortable things. I love, one of the reasons I love Moana, and I think Disney movies, or using movies that kids like or shows that kids like. Pay attention to what your kids are watching. It's really, some things on even kids' YouTube, I'm like, okay, next, I just encourage. But the one thing that I'll use is like examples from movies when we're talking about hard stuff. So I love Moana, because I feel it offers a really safe container for parents to talk about loss and grief and death and bravery. And you can pull this out of different movies, but with navigating, our cat died, right? And that process of, okay, or then, as loved ones have died over the years, like that's been something that we will use. And that might be something that's helpful, because conversations, I think it's hard to have honest conversations. I know, and parents only do the best they can, but maybe this might have been your experience in childhood. I know with mine, it was like, let's not talk about, or it was like, let's wait till you're older, or like just a soft, and I think that's a cultural thing and a generational thing of not really like, let's keep you as pure as long as possible. But military kids are honestly exposed to a lot because of the moving and faced with a lot of inconsistency, right?
Oh, yes, we've always been very open about talking about everything, because you're right, and I grew up that way as well. And like you said, not necessarily that it was a bad thing, that was just the way that it was. And it also took a little bit of, I have to say, my husband has been amazing in that aspect, because he is very open and articulate in talking, especially as a PA. So the combination of the two of us together, we've really found this, our children can talk to us about anything. They can bring up anything. They can talk about anything. There's really no boundaries. And that means a lot to me. And at first it was really hard to navigate, because I was not used to that as a child. When you talk about Disney movies and, how we can relate that to our lives. And I don't know if you've seen Vivo. It's one of the newer ones.
Oh, no, but I know what you're talking about.
And it's about this little girl who basically, the main part that we take away from it, it's about this little girl who bounces to the beat of her own drum. And that's one of the songs. And, I always related that to Melina. We fell in love with the movie with my daughter. And because it's, she has this concept that, and this idea that it's really hard for her to show her emotion, and she gets really embarrassed. And, if she gets to this point of where, she's breaking down, as all children do, we kind of remind her, just step aside, and it's okay to come out of the situation and step out of the situation and feel what you're feeling. You don't have to hold it in and get really upset and blow up. And, no matter where you are, and if you're somewhere that you don't feel comfortable, just ask the person, is it okay? I just need to take a minute. And so I think that translate a lot into understanding that you don't need a certification, or you don't need all of this knowledge to teach your children or your family how to be mindful about themselves and others. Because I think we get hung up on this, I'm not certified in this, I don't know about this, so I can't do it. But all it takes is these tiny little steps. And the children react to it in such a positive way, and then it spreads through the family, and it's beautiful to see. And, it's also very applicable in the classroom. I mean, they not only take that from home, but then they're also to translate that into the classroom. And then, you talk to teachers sometimes that they say, teachers don't know, I'm just saying in general, if they have trouble with a student in a classroom, or there's something going on, or they say that it's like a behavioral issue, or, they might need to be tested for something. Take a few minutes and try some of these techniques. How awesome would it be if we had the time to, and I know it can be very difficult in certain situations, but how awesome would it be if we could take the time to just step aside and teach a child how to breathe through that?
Yeah, absolutely.
While they're in school, and see that change and be like, oh, okay, then it doesn't lead to this reaction and, going like this rolling ball of just going and going and going and going.
Well, and I think too is like as kids learn to, like a lot of it is body first, and then it affects the mind. So if you get anxious, or if there's because I mean, a lot of kids are very present,
mm-hmm.
and they're very sensitive. And I think that this is like something that we kind of, as a culture, we just kind of we outgrow. And I'm not saying it's a natural thing. Like the way our society is, we kind of thicken our I guess the veil of sensitivity, right? Where it's easier just to, and I think a lot of it's bypassing and avoiding
mm-hmm.
Our true feelings. And I mean, there's new stuff coming out in the psychology world about fawning, which is where we abandon ourselves to make everybody else comfortable.
Mm-hmm.
And this is something that oftentimes, like the suppressant of just don't, like, let's just put a name or a diagnosis on this, and let's. And I'm just being honest, like, let's just do something to make it stop,
mm-hmm.
versus actually looking at the root. And it could be, I think as parents, it's like, if there's something wrong with and I say quote unquote wrong, right? If someone brings something and it's like, all of a sudden you feel like they're saying something's wrong with your kid, then you internalize it. And then you think it's your fault, when maybe it's actually not this dramatic. It's just it's part of like learning how your kid, their nature is. Like,
mm-hmm.
My daughter's very, very empathetic and very, very sensitive. If I get loud, she will shut down and she cries. Even if my husband's playing Call of Duty and like getting loud, she does not like loud noises.
Mm-hmm.
And so she gets very like she loses her emotional regularity. Like she just loses it and wants to hide. She actually she has her safe spot, which, she goes, in her room, she goes under her bed, and she has this like cozy space, and that's where she goes. But, she goes there when she's upset. And part of this is learning how to work with her and being more mindful, because I come from a pretty loud family,
mm-hmm.
and, learning that I can't, like when I'm upset, raising my voice it doesn't work in a lot of situations, but especially like if she's not listening, or if she wants something, she'll climb she'll climb the pantry. And if I get loud or I react, she runs off and she goes and hides and cries. And it's literally over. And like, I'm like, why does it have to turn into this big thing? But knowing my daughter's nature and her tendencies, and as parents, like, especially because we talked about this before, it's easy to say, oh, kids are just resilient. And I've had people tell me, oh, kids are resilient. Kids are resilient because they adapt to their environment. Mm-hmm. But it doesn't mean that it doesn't have an impact on their body and their nervous system. And it's also not about just making them comfortable all the time, because that's not life. Life is not comfortable. But it's the ability for them to communicate and be with it and learn to respond to it, or to advocate for themselves, right? Mm-hmm. Which with my daughter, it's always important. Like, I want her to ask for what she needs, and because, when you talked about mom guilt, the geographical separation and seeing the byproduct, and being close to several spouses who have witnessed, or parenting while the partner's on deployment. And, you do step into like this very protective father-mother role, or I think that's single parent homes. It's like you're holding both roles, and there's a lot of energy of just getting through of what you need to do. And then when the partner comes back or things change, kids go through, yes, they're resilient, but there is a process of change, and just mindfulness really allows us to see it with compassion and see ourselves with that compassion.
Mm-hmm. Oh, I agree with you because, even if it's not, especially in the military world, even if it's not a long deployment, even if, the significant other is only gone for, 2 or 3 months on a shorter mission or a deployment, even that short time period really takes a little bit of adjustment coming back and refiguring out. And for me, there's always been that that essence of just, I guess, the control. I guess if you want to, if I really need to put a word to it, because it's like, well, you've been gone and I've been doing it this way. Who are you to come back in and tell me to let's start doing it this way again? And
so
I feel
hard.
like that is so prevalent in families, especially, military families, because they go through these changes. And with the longer deployments, I can imagine how it's even more stressful, just reintegrating. And not only that, for the children to now say, okay, well, everything was on, mommy, and she told me how to do this and what to do. And now I have to, wait a minute, now I have to listen to 2 different people. And not that it's different from before, but mentally, it's hard to kind of rewire your brain and to really be mindful, I guess, about, okay, well, wow, we're back to a cohesive unit again. We're back to being a family.
Well, and
so
it takes time, and this is something that has been needed for over a decade, is the homecoming process and the reintegration back post-deployment. And, oftentimes our personnel don't get much time off after a deployment. They just go straight back to work, or they might get a 4-day weekend, but, it just continues. And, on the other side of it, I've seen personnel feel like they're not loved or seen in their family. Like they're not, they feel so, they come home and it's like this, their partner has all these things together, and it's like the kids aren't as loving or snuggly. It's like they have all this expectation and it's not happening. And then that creates more mental health challenges and distance between the partners. And whether I know I've seen people, immediately jump into therapy together and do whatever they can to work it. But then it's easy just to assume we're just going to flow right back in. And that, even my husband doing a geographical separation, we still, we came back together in March, and it was I went and visited, and I was there for 3 months with him during the pandemic, that time period. But even just still, because that was a year and a half, that was 2 years, over 2 years actually,
Mm-hmm.
of us doing that. But when he came back in March, April, June, officially, it's been a process, and, we're getting better, but the importance of open communication about this stuff, and, curious of what units can do and what leadership and policy could do to ensure that families are taken care of through the process. And it's not just FRG, figure it out, right?
Mm-hmm.
But it really is that there are ways to build morale within the family, in the unit as well, with one another, to make sure that people are regulating and processing their experiences, but also for families, because there's a lot of challenges that come with this. And there is statistics that show that military kids it's 40 to 60% more likely to have anxiety disorders than civilian children. And this comes from, I believe, a VA study that was done, and you can find that online in 2014. And when you think about, again, it's this is our lifestyle, this is our culture, we've normalized it. And I think that that's good in the sense of the shame and mom guilt stuff. It's this is the stuff, or behavioral stuff, or seeing, kids navigate different things. It's normal in our community. However, the need to make sure that we're also looking at ways that we can support. And, mindfulness, I love how Tania was talking about, there's just little things that you can begin with. And your story of your son having the concussion, and how that really was what brought this into your life. And I don't know if you want to share a little bit more about that experience with the mindfulness and maybe any gems or tips that you might have for people who want to start bringing more mindful coping skills into their families.
Yes, actually, when we were going through that period in our life, it's funny that I talk about it in this way, because earlier I said, you don't need all of these skills. You don't need this certification to be able to practice this. But when I was going through that personally, even with all of my knowledge, with my background, I've been a counselor for years. I even felt that like, what do I do to help my son? I need to bring somebody in to try something different because I'm not sure what to do. It was a struggle. And just looking at, outside of the box instead of, not medication or this and that. But so, like I said, I had hired a coach to come to the house because of everything that was going on. My son had a really difficult time with trusting people and trusting environments and being able to go, somewhere for a meeting with a counselor or somebody, professional. So we brought her to the house, and we would, give them some space. And not only did she work with him one-on-one, but she also sat down with us and said, this is what we're doing with him, and this is how you can apply it to the family. And honestly, when it comes down to it, at that age, a lot of it had to do with breathing techniques and body scanning. Like, those were the two main techniques that we really focused on in regards to mindfulness. And for a child at that age, that can be really hard to do if you're not used to it. Like, I think back to when I started yoga or when I started, meditation. And, I was one of those people that, like, there's no way I can sit through a yoga class. No way, I can't do that. Are you kidding me? Until I got to this point where I said, okay, I'm going to try this because it just feels like I need to right now. So for even a child to, be able to, and not necessarily sit and meditate, because meditation doesn't always mean that you have to sit there in peace and quiet for 20 minutes,
For sure.
I know you know this.
Yeah, for sure.
But being mindful about what your body feels like and just laying down and starting from your head all the way down to your toes. That was a big exercise that really helped a lot. And I use that even now with my daughter, even with the, like I was talking about the guided meditation that I did with her last night, and it works for adults as well, and you can do it yourself. That would probably be my gem, because no matter how much you can try to do anything else, just being present and just thinking about energy moving through your body from your head down to your toes and taking each body part and saying it out loud and saying how it feels. It's so easy to do it.
Yeah, and this is a way for the brain to repair its connection with the body. I mean, this is a process of vagal tone, strengthening that vagal tone in your vagus nerve, in your nervous system. And this is a big piece that people who have low vagal tone tend to have depression, anxiety, chronic pain. And so practices like body scanning, and something that a really simple way that I've seen to start this kind of stuff is when your kid's upset, ask them where they feel it in their body. It's like, I feel it in my head, or I feel it in my heart, or I feel it in my stomach or my belly. And then asking, what does it feel like? And they might say, sad, because I'm sad, right? But it's getting them in the habit. There's no right answer to this kind of stuff. It's just getting in the habit to go, oh, wow, actually my stomach hurts when I'm talking about this. Or, my head hurts. And getting your children to start to communicate body sensations that I feel. One great thing is like, well, I love the emojis. Kids love emojis.
Yeah.
So the emoji chart, and asking your kid, like, how do you feel right now? Circle the emoji that you feel. And then put a heart around the emoji you want to feel. Like, how do you want to feel versus how you feel? And then maybe doing something with them. And then afterwards ask, like, okay, so how do you feel now? Do you feel like this or this after emoji, or maybe there's another emoji? But getting them to connect and articulate their emotions is so big of how they feel. And oftentimes we spend so much time being intellectual and in the head and like, analyzing with the mind, but what happens when we sense with the body? And for kids, this is really big, because if I notice that my heart hurts, then what can I do to make my heart feel better versus fixing this big problem? Like the frog died, and you like, I, as a parent, I can't like bring the frog back to life, right? But it's, well, how do you feel it? Where do you feel it? What, and I've even done things where I ask my daughter, does it feel like a color? Like I get, and this is just
that.
fun conversations. And she's done that with me. She's like, is it a color? And, we're big on colors and using colors that make you feel good, and that it's okay that your favorite color changes because sometimes your feelings change. And with body scans too is often a question that I hear from people with starting, and maybe you can piggyback on this, is the question of like, thumb, pointer finger, middle finger. What am I supposed to be doing with it? And the answer is just noticing, right? Like you don't have to do anything with it or change it. It's just getting your brain to connect and notice it.
Yes, I agree with you. And it's actually like, it goes back to the whole mind-body concept, because, for so long we focus so much on what is our mind telling us? What is our brain telling us? What does it sound like in there? And not really making that connection with, like you talk about with our nervous system, and whether it be, I feel excited and I'm shaking, or I feel anxious and my tummy hurts. So I think it's very important for them to also realize, doing a body scan when you're not in a situation where you're stressed or you're just kind of, hanging out in chill mode or happy or on the couch, and also understanding how it feels when you're in that positive energy as well, and not just the negative energy when you're, when you need to, decompress.
Well, and it's showing them that you can consciously control this.
Yeah.
Like I can't control what's happening in the world or what someone else does, but I can consciously choose and control how I want to experience it. And for kids, we don't have to get like that philosophy might feel so overwhelming, but just in the now moment that like I'll act like my daughter, if she throws a fit and then, we process it and it's not going anywhere, so like she's staying in it, I will tell her, hey, like this is a choice. These are some options that can maybe make you feel bad or feel better. But if you want to stay feeling bad, you can stay I let her, like, so there's been times where the yoga, the mindful, like it didn't work.
Yes.
And then she just stays in it. But I always remind her that it is a deliberate choice. And the reason I do this is not to dampen the seriousness of like different mental health stuff or like how people feel, but it's to show her that like I want her to always feel self-agency. And I want her to always be able to feel self-sovereign, that she can choose. And that even though things might feel really bad, it is possible to find hope, or like in situations, even in my own life that have let's go back to a great Disney movie, extremely tragic, horrific, sad experiences. And I think for people who've experienced trauma, a lot of people can probably relate to this. Like, what do? You can't control, you can't fix, you can't go back in time. But in Frozen 2, when Elsa dies, right, and there she goes too deep and she's gone, right, and lost, and Anna's Anna's in the cave and is crying, and she says, she starts singing that song, and she says it's the next right thing. And I love it. I get chills. I could cry. I mean, I do cry when that part comes up, and sometimes talking about it, because when things are really hard, my daughter's 5 right now, and I will be there to catch her in any way, every way I can. But as she gets older, I can't save her from everything. I can't protect her from everything. And, we are in the military. Like, my husband is eligible, just like your husband's eligible for deployments and things. And also, like, we live in a life where death is inevitable, right? Like, there's a lot of things I can't control as she gets older. However, my hope is that as she grows up, that she can always know that even in the darkest cave, that she can even still, like, instead of figuring things out, what is just in this moment the next right thing.
Well, and also understanding that, it's okay to have that deep, dark day sometimes, or, those hours, or even, as an adult, I really have to like sit and think about, what? It's okay that I didn't get what I needed to get done today. It's okay that I just needed to curl up on the couch and read my book or catch up on my shows, because there will still be tomorrow. and helping them to understand that it's okay for them too. Like, they're just human like us. And, it's okay to have a bad day. But like you said, teaching them the skills on how to get through that and push through that and feel that and understand why they're feeling it. And then, okay, now how do I move out of it?
Yeah.
And what do I need to do? But also, they might not know that they need to. It's a lifelong process of learning yourself.
Yeah.
And then as soon as you learn it, it might change again. Depending on whether, like I said before, whether you're single or you're married or you have a family or you have 4 kids or, you move on to a different state or a different country, whatever the situation is. It's really becoming not adaptive to your environment, but really knowing yourself and adapting yourself to
and
the situation.
Honoring what you need and what you don't
Yes.
need. This is why when I say and I probably said it before, self-care is not what you do, it's who you are.
Yeah.
And when you practice the embodiment of these things, and like we said in the beginning of this conversation with co-regulation, is like, as adults, as we navigate things, being honest as is appropriate. Like, you're a parent, and you discern what's appropriate to how transparent about things. But nonetheless, like, for example, I know every household, I'm sorry, if you're in a marriage and you say you don't argue with your partner, I don't believe you. When me and my husband get in arguments and, we, and if Isla's sitting there or sees anything, like, we talk about it with her.
Yes.
And I'll say, like, mommy's upset with daddy, but it's going to be okay. Or like, we make sure she sees us make up. And, like, she sees us have that, like, the end of the conversation, or because if she saw or that, we'll talk with her about it. And it's uncomfortable, but part of this is that co-regulation, that she sees, hey, like, I can be in relationships with people and get mad at them. Or she'll be really mad at me, but it's okay because you still I love you. I can still, and I can solve this, because versus like, oh wait, there's a fight. This means I need to run away. No, there's always closure, and maybe we don't get closure in this now moment, but it's gonna, like, sometimes time heals things, right? So we're getting close to the end of this episode, and I wanted to ask you if there is anything that you want, if you like, for other military spouses to know with mindful coping for kids, and just like any advice like that you would want to give, if, like, maybe years ago when you first became a military spouse, or things that you've learned that you would want to share.
Well, I think the most important thing that I would like to share today is that, anybody can do this. It really is important to keep in mind that, like I've said over and over again, you don't need a certification, or you don't need this certain amount of knowledge. All it takes is really knowing yourself, getting to know your family, what works and what doesn't, and kind of following through with that. And, something as simple as one thing that I would love to share, actually, that I believe has been a gem in our family, is having a gratitude journal. We have this journal, like, right near the front of our house, and it just kind of sits there. We don't write it, on a daily basis, but whenever we have the inclination to, or want to write something or feel something, we, open the book and write something down. And it's really neat to go back and read it once in a while and catch up on it and be like, oh, wow, like, that person was feeling like this that day, and I didn't even realize it, especially for my kids. And I think it really gives me hope to know that, like, they were able to kind of figure this out on their own and work through it and write it down, kind of like journaling, and then be able to be at peace with themselves and not necessarily have to, jump to me or jump to their father for every little answer or for every little question or for every little issue or drama going on. And it takes practice, but that's what mindfulness and teaching them these techniques, that's what it can get to. That could be like the end point and the gem, to where that they can take care of themselves. They have that capability, whether they're 5 years old or 16 years old or 28 years old.
Yeah, for sure.
There's all these little steps along the way, and seeing that is just amazing the way it unfolds.
I love that so much. Because gratitude is like the path to abundance in so many ways. And there's so much research around how that can regulate and be able to talk about like see yourself where you're at, and then also being able to reframe is such a skill and a tool. So I love it. And there's so many really great mindfulness books and things at Barnes and Nobles, on Amazon. And like Tania said, this stuff is readily accessible. If you're not sure where to start, you can always like Google a few things and just like get little ideas, or maybe just starting with having a conversation with your kid. And one thing to remember is to make mindfulness really simple. All mindfulness is self-awareness. It's paying attention on purpose. Present.
And without judgment.
Yeah.
That's so important for me to always
without judgment or without reactivity. Yes. I mean, it's just attending the present moment. And the present moment is, if you're not sure, like, well, what does it mean to be present? It's a mindfulness to what's meaningful right now. So This was so beautiful. Thank you so much for coming on and sharing your experience, your background. And if people were to want to get in touch with you or work with you or connect with you, how could they reach you?
So I have a website. It's tlpwellness.com. You can look me up over there. And I'm also on Facebook and Instagram. My business page is also as TLP Wellness. And I have my email information, all my contact information on there as well.
Awesome. Thank you. And thank you for listening to today's episode on Operation Within. Please be sure to subscribe, share, and if this podcast made you think of anybody, definitely send it over to them, as it helps us be able to serve and support you. Thank you so much, and we'll see you next time.